Hi, everybody. I'm Clark Harvey. I'm president of Arrowhead Talent Solutions, and this is the Who Are You podcast. Hey, everybody. Wanted to do something a little bit different today to kind of tie out this limited series, and we thought it would be really fun if my wonderful wife, Tara, interviewed me today and talked a little bit more about my story, and we'll just kind of see where the conversation goes. But we think it'll hopefully be interesting and put a nice little bow on the previous podcast that we've completed. So hopefully this will be a fun and rewarding exercise. And here we go. So Tara, why don't you take it away?
All right. The hope is I can extract a little bit more out of you than the normal person could, because I've heard your stories a few times, and I feel like I know what people need to hear versus just the surface talk. So, yeah, if that makes sense.
I think that's very fair, and I think that I have a real strong just hesitancy or reticence to talk about myself anyway. And then, yeah, I wouldn't talk about stuff unless you pull it out of me. So I think what you're saying is completely valid. And frankly, like, I don't know where this will go, and I'm not really thrilled to be doing this in some respects, but I get why we're doing it. So this was Tara's idea.
And we joked too, because neither one of us are going to want to listen to this podcast after it's recorded, because we're already thinking our voices are going to just drive each other nuts. Like, I didn't want to hear my voice. I know you don't want to hear your voice. So this could just get released, and I don't know, maybe our moms will listen and we'll see, but we're surely not listening to it. So anyway, but we should probably get it started.
Well, let's just give it a try and then see how it goes. But hopefully we have a good, fruitful discussion here. And Tara's got some questions prepared for me, and we'll just get started. So why don't you dive in, babe, and we'll see where this goes.
Let's first take it where you've taken it with the other podcasts that you've done, the previous podcasts in the series. Just start off with your childhood. Tell me a little bit about where you grew up, where you went to high school, and little things like that.
Okay, so I grew up in a really small town, and no one has ever really heard of it. It's called Lucas, and it was, or it is rather, it's in Ohio. It's close to Mansfield, so the claim to fame would be that Mansfield's where Shawshank Redemption was filmed, and my hometown is where a lot of the scenes that were out in the country in Shawshank, a lot of those were filmed in Lucas, in the countryside there. So that's where I grew up, went to high school there, and graduated with the class of 50. My hometown was probably like 600 or so people, something like that. So really small. I would say fairly sheltered, but it was still a very nice place to grow up. And I still talk to a lot of my friends from my childhood in high school. And it's kind of cool because the people I graduated high school with, I knew them ever since. I mean, I had conscious thought, honestly. It was like, 3 or 4 years old. And the friends I had back then were the same friends I had when I graduated high school. So that was kind of cool. But I grew up in Lucas and have one sister, obviously a mom and a dad. And so I'll start there.
Yeah. When you were growing up, were there any indicators that you would be in leadership roles in your career? Like, I feel like you are a born leader, and I say that in a very positive way. Like, you're, I think, an amazing business leader. You're a great kind of leader of our family. But was there anything that indicated that as you were growing up?
Probably, yeah. I haven't really thought about it too often, but I guess, yeah, because if I'm thinking about it, like, growing up, I was the captain of the basketball team and stuff, and I wanted to be class president for our senior year of high school. Not because I was too interested in like the day-to-day administrivia of that, but I was thinking ahead because I was like, I don't know if anyone else will want to plan the class reunions when we're older. And I remember thinking that that's why I wanted to do it, because I wanted to be the one who got everybody back together into the future. and planned out the reunions. So
that's not shocking, though. I mean, you're the most organized person I know. I mean, everything you do has an exact way that you have to do it. I mean, everything down to your closet, the way it's organized. I mean, t-shirts by color. I'm not sure I know anybody who does that. Your email, the way you organize it, it's just wildly organized. I can't even wrap my brain around that. But I guess that's not shocking that you wanted to organize the class reunion. But like,
yeah,
beyond that, what did you want to do?
thanks for calling out my closet in front of our millions of listeners.
Well, I'm glad you didn't call mine out, because I think there's just layers of clothes on the bottom, like on the floor. So
yeah, who knows what's under all those clothes. Actually, I do think I said something about my closet when I was interviewing Jake.
Mm-hmm.
So
well, it's verified now.
Yeah, it's definitely verified. So what did I want to do? I didn't really have a ton of I don't know. I mean, I think everybody, when they're an athlete growing up, they're like, I want to be a professional, this or that. When I was really little, I thought I want to be a basketball player, which, whatever. But I think when I got, into elementary and middle school, I thought it would be really cool to be an architect. And I love designing things. I love building Legos and models, like car models. I don't think anybody even does that stuff anymore, but I would build like the model cars with the glue, and I would paint them and try to make them really perfect. And I remember being so frustrated when things wouldn't work out perfectly. And so that was a big thing I love to do. So I love designing things and putting them together. And I just love the thought of being an architect. And then moving on to high school, I guess I probably didn't have a ton of time to even think about stuff like that because I just stayed so busy. But I think I remember writing a paper about wanting to, I could see myself being a TV show host or a host of some sort. And then even, I think, talking about like being a therapist of some sort. That may not be exactly true, but it's just weird because now thinking about that, like I ended up getting my master's in counseling. So that was kind of interesting.
Yeah.
But so when I went to college and I was trying to pick my major, my mom and I sat down and we looked at the website, the university website, and looked at the list of available majors, and one was corporate communication. And we were like, my mom helped me with that, thankfully. She's like, I think that sounds really good, and that sounds like something you would be good at. So didn't quite know where that would lead, but I declared that major as an 18-year-old and actually stayed with it, not really knowing exactly what direction that would take, but I think it was more about the skills that I would develop as a result of that training.
Do you it hindered you at all that you chose that degree, or do you think that you're thankful that it was a more general, so you could kind of take it into any direction you wanted to?
I think that's probably the latter is probably the correct answer. I think you can go back and double guess, second guess rather, all those decisions, but you got to give yourself a little bit of grace there and go, well, you were 18, you didn't know any better. I think with our kids, I'll say, you need to go to college if you have a very specific objective. Do you want to study something that's going to give you a concrete skill that will make you very marketable in the job marketplace? So accounting degree, nursing degree, something like that. I would definitely preach that message to our kids. But for me, I think it worked out okay because I had some general skills that have applied to pretty much all my jobs. So maybe I'm being hypocritical by telling my kids that they need to have a very specific objective when they're going to college, because that's not really what I did. But I was first generation though too. Like our parents, no, my parents, your parents didn't really go to college until your mom did later.
My mom did, yeah.
But sure. I guess the point is I was pretty ignorant and, about what college could be, and that's okay. But so anyway, I think it was the right thing for me at the time.
For sure.
To say it.
For sure. With me, I mean, I was a phys ed major. It was pretty specific. And around year 3, I decided, it's funny because I don't really want to be a gym teacher. So whoops.
That's the downside.
A little too late. Yeah. So
that's true. That's the downside of doing something very specific. You hear about people who go to law school and then they're a year or 2 years into it and they go, oh my gosh, I hate this. Yeah. But they're $60,000 in debt already.
You can't turn back from that.
They have to complete it and then go get a job at a law firm, and they hate that too, but they're stuck.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely.
So yeah, I don't know. I don't know the right answer, but I think for me, it was probably the right move.
But then moving into your first job, you actually worked at the university that you attended.
Yeah, so I went to, you did too, obviously, Walsh University in North Canton and a small private Catholic college, which worked out really well for me because North Canton felt like a big, big city to me. And it was very scary, frankly. But Walsh being a small college and having a lot of the comforts of home was really important to me to make that transition. And so I'm really glad I went to Walsh for that reason alone, honestly. But yeah, I graduated and worked at the university for about 4 years. And it wasn't necessarily because of my degree. It was because I gave tours when I was an undergrad. I would give tours to the high school kids and who are considering going to Walsh. And I liked doing it. And I think that really helped me big time with my presentation and communication skills and just talking to strangers and being able to size them up. I think it was really important for me, honestly, to be able to do stuff like that and to have the requisite confidence to do the stuff I do today. And I remember getting a lot of very, very, very positive feedback from the parents and the students and even the folks in the admissions office about how well I was doing giving the tours and representing the university. And that obviously made me feel good, but more than anything, it made me think, okay, I never thought of myself as a success in anything, honestly. And I thought, oh, okay, I'm getting some validation here. Like maybe I do have some capabilities that I'll be able to use when I graduate. So that was pretty cool. And then, yeah, I was a graduate assistant for about a full year after my undergrad. And then I was a graduate assistant in the counseling department at Walsh because I was going to get my counseling degree. I was studying, doing that full time, and then graduate assistant part time. And then I was working part time at TGI Fridays as well. That was more like full time. I was working a lot there. So I was pretty busy. But I was trying to make money, and make it. I was living in an apartment by myself, and it was working out, but it was tough. And then one day I got a call from my future boss, the vice president of enrollment there, and he said, I've got a job opening here in admissions. Would you come work for me? And I was really shocked in a good way. And he said, I'll pay you a salary and benefits, and we'll help pay for your grad school. And I thought, oh my gosh, like I'd be so dumb to turn this down. And so that's how it all worked out. I'm really grateful for that.
It's funny to hear about your interview process because it was very different than mine, where I was grilled. And it sounds like you just got a job offer because you're so wonderful.
I think I was a known commodity. That's probably what I would say to be diplomatic. So I don't know.
I think honestly, this kind of starts the theme from that I see through your career, through just your life in general. I think you really do have a passion for helping people and wanting to make things better.
Yeah.
And even if it's something like giving a student and their parents a tour of a college, like I feel like you want to help them along their path to make sure that, just they feel comfortable and that they have the ability to make good, right decisions.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I think you're right. I think a lot of what I've done without even realizing it is just to help people along their journey, whatever that looks like, and to help people find their place. And so I remember when I was working at Walsh in the admissions office, I was still doing part-time work at the restaurant, just on a very part-time basis to make some extra cash. And the managers would call me at Fridays and say, hey, one of our employees is looking to better himself and go to college. He has no idea how to do it. Would you come in and help him? And I was like, yeah, that would be awesome. Like, what an honor, to be able to help somebody in any way. But I remember talking to people about how to get into different colleges and programs and sitting down with them at the restaurant and walking them through how the admissions process works and the financial aid process and the application process and stuff like that. So I think whatever tools I had at the time or skills I had or knowledge I had, I always wanted to share it and help people figure out their place and how to improve their lives too.
Taking it back just a hair, a worthwhile story. What was your worst moment at TGI Fridays? And if you don't tell the story that I want you to tell, I'm going to be so disappointed.
I have a lot of terrible food service is fun. It's awesome, but it's also like in the moment, in the heat of the moment, it can be really stressful. I think probably one of the worst things I ever did is I was carrying a bunch of food out to a table, and then I hit like a bump, or somebody bumped into me, and like this big thing, we call them ramekins, which no one knows what a ramekin is, but it's like a small container for sauces and whatever. Is this a story you want?
Oh, this is it.
This ramekin of Jack Daniel's sauce, which is like, has the consistency of glue, flew off the plate, one of the plates I was carrying. And it was like the most embarrassing thing that ever happened to me. This thing of Jack Daniel's sauce dropped right onto this guy's crotch of his jeans. And he was horrified and he was mad. And I think he made a show of it so he could get a bunch of free stuff. So I said to one of the bus boys, I was like, hey, give him a wet rag to clean himself off. And then the bus boy grabs the wet rag and starts trying to clean the Jack Daniel's sauce off of this guy's crotch himself. And I'm like, no, give him the rag. So it just like added insult to injury. And then he complained, this customer complained to the manager, and we ended up having to give him write him a check so he can go out to the mall and get a free pair of jeans or something. It was so embarrassing. What are you going to do? That was probably my worst moment out of many bad moments. And
yeah,
I had a lot of good ones, but you're just going to do embarrassing stuff,
Oh my gosh, absolutely.
I dropped food and drinks and just so many embarrassing. That was probably my worst moment though.
During our time at Walsh, and I worked at Walsh with you, I think you may have mentioned that already. We worked there at the same time. We worked with a lot of great people, and the environment was, honestly, I don't know how you can get much better than that. Do you feel like that experience kind of molded a little bit the way that you want your team to work now that you're a leader?
Yeah. Yes. It's hard to answer in a succinct way, but I think the short answer is absolutely. I think when we look back on those times, you and we think, oh my gosh, that was so fun. We were around people who were like-minded in similar stages of life. That all mattered and stuff, but I think more than anything, they were just good people and fun people and smart people. And even on days where you didn't really love going into work because you had a difficult project to do or whatever, you still knew you were going to have fun and enjoy your team and your coworkers. And that meant a lot, I think. And having that sense of camaraderie and stuff was so important. And I remember feeling that acutely. And then I think a big lesson from that is you don't have to necessarily rely on your leadership to create that environment for you. You can create that as just a worker. If people aren't going to do that, you can do it. And sure, people may try to stop you and whatever, but I remember we did all sorts of fun little games and stuff that we started ourselves to boost morale. And we had so much fun doing it. And I think everybody saw how effective it was in not only increasing morale, but then in turn, increasing our team performance, because we were all having fun and enjoying each other, and we were working toward a common goal.
Yeah.
So yeah, I remember that being really impactful, and definitely I think I carry those lessons on to this day.
How did you know it was time to leave?
I don't remember the exact timing, but I remember when when you got, did we get married? I can't remember the timing, but when we got married is when something I was always a hard worker and wanted to make a difference and stuff like that. But then when we got married, I felt like something inside of me really changed to a point where I was like a caged animal, and I knew I needed to do something different and something more. And Walsh was a great time and wonderful experience. But I think at some point an institution of that size may not afford the opportunities that a young guy wants. And so I knew it was time, especially then when we got pregnant with our first. And I just knew I had to get out there. And that was a really hard time for me. I was very sad a lot of times because I knew I had a lot more to offer. And I wanted to provide a better life for you and our baby. And that was really hard for me because I knew I could do it. I just needed a break. And that was really, really hard to go through that time. And but because I felt like a failure in many respects, but was super grateful to get my break. And great time at Walsh.
Absolutely.
Learned a lot. Met you, of course. But there's a time and a place for everything too.
So basically, that's when you began your stint in the corporate world.
Yeah.
And it seems like with recruiting in higher ed, that gave you a lot of kind of like interchangeable skills that you could use on the corporate side of things, because human nature never changes. You know, it doesn't change. You know how to treat people.
Yeah.
What lessons did you learn from that first corporate job?
Yeah, there's a ton of what we would call in the HR world transferable or interchangeable skills, because you're recruiting high school kids to come to your college and admissions. So a lot of what you're doing still works when you're trying to recruit professionals to come join your organization. So I had a lot of transferable skills, but the pace of higher ed is way different from a big corporation. And so the biggest thing I had to learn was like how to be more efficient with my time. And I learned the value of efficiency really fast. I learned the value of just putting in the time though as well. So it may sound paradoxical, but when I was there, I was trying to fill at one point 96 open jobs all by myself. I was the only recruiter there at that company. And so you can be as efficient as you want, but you still have 96 jobs to fill. At some point, you just got to say, all right, I'm staying home, keep dinner warm or don't. I'll get home when I get home and I'll reheat the dinner. And that was really hard too, because I hated being away from you. But
you had to prove yourself almost too, because that was your first corporate job. So you needed to prove your worth. And I mean, it was pretty obvious to me, but I didn't work there. But you worked so hard.
Yeah. And that's probably where like the obsessive tendencies and stuff really started coming out. I think I was always like that and always a hard worker, but when you butt up against an environment like that brings out those tendencies even more, then you got a recipe for, I mean, at that point in time, I had the energy for it though, and the drive and stuff and the motivation. So it was a pretty good mixture of my makeup, if you will, and the needs of the company. And I think I was able to make an impact and do pretty well for myself in a short amount of time.
Yeah, it was a relatively short amount of time, and you weren't actively looking for another position, but something kind of fell into your lap a little bit.
Yeah. So another big company in town, they had a bunch of job openings on their recruiting team, and a friend reached out who worked there and said, hey, would you want to come work here? And one thing led to another. It was really fast. She said, hey, my boss looked at your LinkedIn profile and he's pretty interested. I was like, oh, okay, that's cool. And in my whole life, I had never really felt wanted, well, professionally. Like trying to leave the university and go to another job was really hard because not a whole lot of people know what an admissions counselor or an assistant director of admissions is or what they even do. And then here I was working at this company for like less than a year, I think. And somebody at another even bigger company saw my background and said, I want to talk to this guy. Like that was crazy. It was really cool, but it was also just, it was a very heady times, I think, for me. And so, yeah, it happened real fast. I did a phone interview, I think, and then did an on-site interview on a Friday. And then it was for a university recruiting job. And it was a really fun position, but I interviewed on a Friday. I remember that. And I came home in the afternoon, and then I got a call from a number that looked like it was from that company. And it was my boss, my future boss calling, and he goes, "Hey, just wanted to call and see how things went and if you had any other questions." And I said, "Oh, I think it went really well. I hope." I said, "My only question would be like, what are the next steps in the process and the timing?" And I remember his response was like, "I am calling to offer you the position right now." It was almost like the tone was like, "You idiot. The only reason I'd be calling you is to offer you the job." And then I just blacked out when he told me what the salary was. And
I remember this exact moment too.
yeah,
I remember you being on the phone. You're walking around our old house. You decide to walk outside. You close the door. And I kind of realize what's happening at this point, and I'm freaking out because I'm so excited for you. And then you walked back in and just told me everything, and we just kind of had a mini celebration right then and there. We were just so thrilled that you had this opportunity, because I knew, my gosh, at a huge company like this, the sky is the freaking limit for you. Truly, I thought that.
Yeah, I don't remember honestly, I don't remember much of anything he even said after he made the offer and told me the salary. And yeah, I mean, that was very exciting and another step along the way. And I learned a lot in that time at that company. And I think I had 4 jobs in just under 5 years.
So I was just going to say, how many promotions did you get?
Yeah, I think I had 4 jobs. I was a university relations recruiting analyst, and then I was a senior recruiter. Then I was the manager of university relations, and then they made me like the company spokesman. So yeah, it was 4 jobs in under 5 years. That was awesome. Tons of opportunities, but again, it was good. But I also, remember a lot of times feeling so terribly about, just all the time that I put into work and
The work-life balance.
Yeah, that really bums me out thinking about it. But like, again, I remember you and I would argue about this, and you'd be like, "You have to come home," and I would be like, "Yeah, I know, I feel bad, but if I don't do this work, the company will find somebody else who wants this job, and I have to stay here." It was so terrible to have to go through that, because I understood where you were coming from, but I knew I had to put my head down and keep working. And eventually it would pay off, I thought, I hoped, I prayed.
Yeah.
And I think it did. But man, talk about delayed gratification, because that was not fun to go through some of those times, to think, oh, maybe hopefully someday this will pay off in some way, shape, or form. But again, I think it has. But looking back on it in a podcast interview, like, that's not really fun to think about those times, especially when you've got young kids at home and stuff like that.
Yeah. And I think I could have been quite a bit more understanding too of your position, and kind of, I mean, you did what you needed to do in order to progress in the job, in order to work your hardest. So, I mean, it's, I guess everybody's got those things
you have the benefit of hindsight now.
Yeah.
But in the moment, I get it. You felt ignored, and you felt like you were fighting with, you weren't fighting with the kids, but you were trying to cook dinner and, take care of 2 babies. And I get it. That was not easy. None of it was easy. But if it's worth it, in the end, I guess it's worth it in the end. But when you're going through it, man, in the middle of that time, it's like, that's not fun. And no one enjoys that, I don't think.
And
which will probably why people don't work as hard as I do.
And I mean, it said nothing about like your lack of efficiency, because truly you're the most efficient person I know. You really are. You can get so much work done in such a short amount of time and not skimp on the details of it. It is just your brain kind of works on a different wavelength than everybody else's. And this is why I knew I had to interview you, because this is stuff you're not willing to say. You're not willing to praise yourself in this way, but it's the truth. And I will gladly be the person that says it. As much as we tease each other and make fun of each other and give each other a hard time. Truly, you are just, it's a whole nother level of drive of getting things done. I've never seen anything like, I don't know anybody else like this. I really don't. But anyway, sorry.
Probably not fun to live with.
No, it's great. Are you kidding me? It's great. You plan our vacations. You you do all of this stuff that really benefits me. So I'm not, it's not that big of a deal, really. But after these promotions, after this crazy amount of work that you've been doing, came your first setback.
Yeah, I think there are probably a lot of mini setbacks along the way, but like a real big one that knocked me for a real loop was getting laid off the first time. I was promoted into a position that was outside of my normal function. So I was promoted into this job. It was company spokesman, for lack of a better term. And I was getting sent all the right signals, I'll just say, from people inside the organization that I was going to have a home with that company for a long time. And, I was building a career here and was really excited. I remember thinking and talking with you about it, like, oh crap, we're going to retire from this company. Like, this is going to be our life. And we were excited about it. And I think for that time, the goal wasn't to be an architect anymore or a TV show or talk show host. It was to be a corporate executive and then to see how high I could go up the ladder, because I enjoyed that. I enjoyed learning about all that stuff. I enjoyed the business world. I thought it would be a fun and rewarding thing to do. And that was our goal at that point in time, was to keep moving up. But then about 3 or 4 months into that job, it was on a Friday afternoon. I was pulled into a conference room, which is what happens when you get laid off. And I knew it as soon as it happened. Walked into the conference room and, got laid off. And that was another one of those moments. So it's kind of fitting with that company. I was in shock when I got my job offer, and I was in shock when I got laid off. And I really don't remember much of anything about that meeting or that conversation at all, other than knowing that I got laid off and that my last day was going to be on Monday. So I had a Friday layoff. The next business day was my last day with the company I had worked so hard at and attached so much of my identity to. And that was really terrible for a lot of reasons. I mean, getting laid off is a blow, and the company wasn't doing so well at the time. But so I don't think it was anything I necessarily did, but getting laid off was tough. And then financially it was very scary because I was the breadwinner. We had just bought a new house at the time. And, it was a tough time for a lot of different reasons. So I didn't enjoy going through that, to say the least, I would say.
Yeah. And I think a testament just to kind of the type of person you are and the type of mindset you have is the day you were laid off.
Mm-hmm.
You said it was, early afternoon.
Yeah.
You didn't come home.
No.
You came home at normal time, which was late, because you just worked late so you can get all your stuff done. I was used to that, and that was totally normal. I thought nothing of it. You went through most of that night playing with kids, put the kids to bed, and you sat me down to tell me, after hours and hours of acting like everything's just normal, that you got laid off.
Yeah.
But then you told me how you spent your afternoon. And do you remember how many people you reached out to that day? Do you remember the number?
No.
It was over 50 people that you sat down. And I don't remember, did you go to a Starbucks?
No, I just went to some parking lot.
Okay.
In town. I didn't want to go home. I knew that'd be bad. So I went to a random parking lot in town, and I immediately texted, emailed, and called every person I could think of to let them know my situation, because I knew I had to activate my network as fast as I could. And that was the right thing to do. And I was just dying on the inside. And then when I had to tell you, I was dying on the inside, like literally dying. I feel like doing stuff like that might take years off your life. I do think that. I don't know if there's any truth to it. But I remember having to act like I got this under control when I told you all that. And all I wanted to do is just crawl into a hole and die too.
Oh gosh,
And
yeah.
the way that you cried when I said all that.
Oh gosh, I handled it the worst way possible. I had no restraint to my emotions, which looking back was so dumb, but very raw and kind of.
There's nothing you can do.
Yeah.
And that killed me too. But, I think there's redemption to all this, which is great.
Absolutely.
But looking back and living through these emotions now as we're talking about it, like, I feel terrible right now. Like, honestly, I feel terrible just thinking about it.
Oh yeah.
But
this was one of the darkest moments of your life. And it continued for quite a few months.
Trying to find a job then, was not easy. We're in a nice area with decent job opportunities, but the more niche your roles become and stuff and your career becomes, it just gets a little bit tougher to find a position and stuff. So it took a while, but activating my network really helped because, that's how I ended up finding my next job. But in that time, it was really hard. We went through what I would consider like, with the book of Job, where Job goes through all those terrible things. Obviously, I don't want to, equate myself to Job and even the magnitude of his problems versus mine. But like, we had a death in the family at that time. We had to take our puppy to the emergency vet 2 or 3 times during that time.
That's expensive.
Yeah. Each of our kids had to go to the ER at least once. We all had this nasty flu bug that lasted for like 2 weeks while I was in the middle of trying to find a job.
Which was your new full-time job, trying to find a job.
Yeah. And then the worst of it for me was that I had like an eye infection. I got antibiotics. And then at the end of my antibiotic schedule, I started getting hives all over my body. I knew I was having a bad reaction. And so I got these hives and it was so painful and I could barely move. And then it got into my joints and I couldn't move. Like, so one day it would be in my wrists, the next my shoulders, the next my elbows, the next my fingers. It was the weirdest thing. I felt like my body was being invaded, and it was like a spiritual thing for me. I was like, I am literally under attack by some spiritual forces here or something. That went on for weeks and weeks and weeks, this reaction. And I felt like that sent me into some really dark spaces, the cumulative effect of all those things that happened during that time. And, luckily one random Friday afternoon, I got a phone call from a random number. And anytime anybody called me during that time, I didn't care what the number was. I was like, I'm picking up. And I got a phone call. I was out in the backyard, I think mowing the grass or something. Some random person, an HR manager at a company I'd never heard of, said, got your resume from a friend. And I was like, oh, okay. Took an interview right there. Didn't even realize it was an interview at the time. Next morning, I got a text from the same person. We want to bring you on site to interview. And all of a sudden, I was in 3 interview processes. One was at a company in Columbus, another in Philadelphia, and another here in Northeast Ohio. And then the one that made the first offer was the one in Northeast Ohio. You didn't really want to move anyway.
Yeah, that would have been a hard move. Yeah.
At that point,
not for you so much as me.
Well, at that point, I was just like, we're running out of money. Like, I got to get a job. I don't care where it is. I'll move wherever. And, but this place made the offer and it was a really good one. And it was perfect timing, started a few months after getting laid off. Really grateful to have the job and the opportunity, obviously, but man, that was not fun to go through that. So that was my first really big setback. And I feel like I took the whole family down with me there for a while.
We're all right. I think we're back on our feet now. So, but this isn't quite the end of this kind of dark time. We had a few months reprieve. We'll try to make this part a little shorter, but tell me about kind of what happened next.
So this next company was smaller, but I thought there was potential. Didn't seem like it was didn't seem like it was maybe a longer term fit for me after being at the organization for a while. We got invited to go on vacation with my sister and her family. I think in just I wasn't delirious by any means, but I think I had been going through it so badly for such an extended period of time that a vacation in that kind of a location, I was like, I'm not passing this up. And I just immediately, she texted me and said, do you want to go to Maui with us? And I immediately was like, yeah, we're going. And I'm glad we went. But I was into this job 7 months. I got a call while I was on vacation. They after a 6 month period, the company said, we'll give you a salary evaluation. If you're doing well, we'll give you a raise. So it took an extra month, but I got a call when I was on vacation and I got a really nice raise. And I remember telling you that while we were out there, pretty exciting, and thinking, okay, well, this is a good thing and we'll take that as a victory. Got back into the office. My second day, I think I was back in the office at this company, and I got the standard, hey, you got a minute? I didn't even think anything of it because I had just gotten a big raise. And then they said, how was Maui? And I said it was good or whatever. And then they were like, yeah, we got to let you go. And I started laughing, I think, because I was like, what? You didn't even give me one paycheck with my new pay rate on it, So it was shocking, but they were going through a lot of difficulties as a company at that time due to some client issues. And so I understood they had to let go of a lot of people, and the person in charge of recruiting was definitely going to get axed when there was a small company that wasn't going to be doing any kind of recruiting for a long period of time. So whatever. But yeah, and I said, when's my last day? And they said, how about today? And I said, oh, okay. And so I just immediately went back to my office and started packing up my things. And that was the most bizarre. I mean, that was just bizarre. And I, again, tried to not tell you about it for a while until I could put a plan together. It was hard and it hurt, but not in the same way it did before.
I think, is it because you felt more as if the first company that the layoff happened at, you felt like that was almost like a permanent gig?
Yeah.
Or a permanent home.
Way more attached.
Yeah.
Way more attached to it. But then once you get beat up like that, you learn a lot of lessons. And one is your identity is not solely your job. And two, you think, oh, this can end at any time. And so you just become less attached to your work, especially when it's not your own entity or your own company or whatever. Like, hey, this is a job. This is separate from my life. And so it was a little bit easier to detach from it.
Yeah.
But it was still obviously, created a lot of challenges down the road about what the heck am I doing with my life kind of stuff, more existential concerns this time. First time was more like, oh crap, I got to get a job. We got to make money to pay for this new house. The second time it was still somewhat of that, of course, but more like, what am I doing here? What do I keep doing? Why is this happening? What's the meaning of this? Clearly, I'm not supposed to go back to another corporate job.
Right. And that's kind of when you started thinking about the bigger picture of what your actual future would look like, as far as whether it be employment or business ownership.
Yeah. And I think we always talked about that sort of stuff, trying to start your own thing and being an entrepreneur, but the timing wasn't right. And it's obviously scary to do that sort of a thing. But in 2017, you said, let's just start the LLC right now. Let's do it. And I was like, oh, okay. Because normally you're not much of a doer. And I don't mean that as
Ouch.
a pejorative. You like to talk about stuff for an extended period of time, think it through, come back to it, let it sit on the shelf, stuff like that. And that's your deliberation process. And so that's how a lot of people are. I'm not like that. So to see that behavior in you, I was shocked by it, but I was like, all right, I knew this was meant to be, because the way you went about it, it was like you had a lightning bolt go through you. And then I was like, I don't know how to start an LLC and incorporate a business and all that stuff. You're like, don't worry about it. I'll do it. And I was like, oh, wow, that's crazy.
And I actually, I
You
did
did
it.
it that day. You like sat down and you actually did it. And you don't even know, like,
I don't remember how I even did it, frankly. There was a website involved. And
Yeah,
that's the
like,
extent of it.
you don't do stuff like that.
No,
And
no.
you were just like, we're going to call it this. And I was like, all right, whatever.
And it was not Arrowhead Talent Solutions.
No.
It was not.
But that's all good. I mean, because the point, the lesson from that is just start. Just
Put it out there.
put it out there and do it. And that was that was a step.
Yeah.
But then, yeah, we didn't touch the LLC after starting it for a while, but that's
No.
when things really got more concrete and more real. And then I got another corporate job, which at that point when I was searching, I realized I'm waking up every day at 7 or whatever I was doing at that time. I'd wake up, I'd look at all the new job postings, I'd apply to jobs, I'd write emails to people, I would send LinkedIn messages, I would have lunch with people and coffee with people. And I mean, I would do anything and everything I could to get my name out there to find my next job. And I finally realized, like, what are you doing, dude? Like, you're going to go back to another thing that's not going to be a fit. And I wrote down like a stream of consciousness thing rather than trying to find a job that matches, like a job title that matches what I wanted. I just wrote down, like, what do you want? And I started realizing all this stuff inside of me. And one was like, I want to go work at a place next time that has a basketball court in it and a gym. Where'd that come from? I have no idea. I want to travel a little bit, not too much. I want like a business casual environment. I want this and that and the other thing. And then randomly, a friend and mentor of mine who is just so instrumental in so many aspects of my life. I think he's an angel sometimes, but he reached out and said, hey, I just heard about this job opening. It was an HR manager at a local big company. And, threw my hat in the ring, sent a resume over, got an interview almost immediately. And I took a tour of the building and I was like, oh my gosh. They took me around and there was a basketball court in the building with a gym. And I remember thinking, like, that's not normal. That's a sign, I think. And it matched a lot of the specifications I laid out at that point in my life. The pay was not nearly what I wanted it to be for us, but it was local. It was a good opportunity for lots of other reasons. And it was an HR manager job, which was a great step for me in my career, what I thought, was going to be my career at that time. But yeah, I mean, again, the twists and turns but it was exactly the right move at that time. And it was definitely made for me and it was supposed to be at that time.
And shortly after getting that job, you were, I think, surprised by, I don't want to say an unlikely job offer, but something that you weren't necessarily expecting.
Yeah, sometimes stuff falls in your lap. It doesn't often, but when it does, it's pretty interesting. So my sister and her husband have a charitable foundation, and they said, "Hey, this thing is like kind of a mess. Would you help us run our big charity event this year?" And I was like, "Yeah, I'll do it." At that point, I was like, "This sounds like a fun challenge and something to do." And my job wasn't as demanding as my previous corporate jobs, and so I had a little bit of margin, and it sounded interesting and exciting. And I was just frankly honored that they would even ask me to help. So I helped them. And I guess we must have done okay executing the event because shortly thereafter, they were like, hey, that was really good. We raised a lot of money. The event went really well. Everyone's saying good things about you. So would you consider running our foundation full time? And I was like, well, I don't really know the first thing about managing a foundation, but I thought, yeah, this is an opportunity that I cannot pass up. And so I took it and, I felt like I left on good terms for my employer and was just grateful for that time in my life, but also the new opportunity I had in front of me. And so, yeah, I accepted it. And then things happened pretty quickly thereafter.
And it was more in the vein of helping people, doing good, contributing to people's, their livelihood and their well-being.
I think it felt a lot less contentious too. And sometimes the corporate world can be filled with just arguments and tense discussions and uncomfortable things and lots of infighting and stuff. And not all the time, of course, but there are times where it got a little tiresome for me because I thought, hey man, we should all be on the same team here. And a lot of times that's just not what happens when you have 100 people, let alone 1,000 working for the same team on the same, the same company. You're just going to have infighting and stuff. And I kind of lost a taste for that. And so it was fun to jump into something that was so clearly focused on helping others in a real, tangible way. And I was able to build this thing because, I mean, there was some stuff in place, but there really wasn't much of a structure to the foundation. My sister and her husband pretty much gave me carte blanche. And so I went out and I just set up a lot of structure and processes and tools and kind of made it into what it is today. And I, was very grateful for that opportunity and the trust that they gave me to do it.
But corporate kind of came calling again, but
yeah,
in a different way that wasn't so corporate.
I started getting calls and texts and emails and stuff from old friends. And it was pretty clear like something was going on that I hadn't planned for. It was just weird looking back on it, like why'd that happen when it did? I'm not to the point, you're not smart enough to plan out a lot of parts of your own life. So friends were like, hey, what should I do with my life? I remember people calling me and asking to get coffee to talk about it. I'm like, that's funny. I love doing it though. And I felt like I was helping people in a real way. And I wasn't asking for money or anything. I was just trying to help, It was really fun. And then people started asking for help with their resumes. And I was like, oh, I can do that. And then my former employer was telling me how busy they were with recruiting. And I said, I can help you guys. And they were like, don't joke around about this. Like, we really need the help. And I said, no, I'll do it. And so that was my first corporate client. And then I had the LLC set up thanks to you. Everything just kind of happened. So I had my first client and I was doing resumes, helping people. And that was primarily what Arrowhead was for a long time, was helping people with their resumes and, charging $100. And then I realized that was too cheap. So then I charged 150, then I went to 200 and I think I ended up at like 250. But that's what it was for a long time. And then I would do some recruiting for companies too with the time that I had. Yeah.
You're such a big thinker. I feel like you can't think small scale. I mean, I don't want to say you can't think small scale, but if you're thinking small scale, you always know kind of what the bigger picture should look like or what you want it to look like. I'm pushing the resume business on you. You're amazing. You're the best resume writer in the world.
That was you more than me. You were talking about like, you should do this resume thing. Yeah.
But I don't think you had the ability to think that small. I think you automatically thought about the recruiting, and that was so much bigger than the resume, so much bigger. And it's something that my brain couldn't quite handle. But your brain, on the other hand, is always thinking big. So
yeah, I don't know. I think you probably shortchange yourself there a little bit, but I do think that you're here on Earth for something or multiple things. And I don't know what I'm ultimately supposed to be here for, but I do think it's everybody's job to make the most of the gifts that they have and the opportunities they're given to live out their purpose and to help make the world better. So like, if you're not making the world better with the gifts that you have, you're wasting those gifts and you're cheating the world out of what you were made to do and what God made you for. So like, it's almost like a duty. You have like a duty to do that. And I have this thing in me that's like, if I can help these companies find the right people and make their companies better, and I can help people find a great job, that is a bigger impact than a resume. Mm-hmm. And so that's kind of how that happened. But yeah, I mean, we don't have much time here on Earth, and the time we do have, you got to make the most of it. And that's probably where that came from more than anything. Just maybe not so much vision, maybe vision, but also just like this feeling like I got to make an impact. I got to make the most of my time here on Earth. And so it just kind of happened. And word of mouth is really what happened to make the business grow. I had a couple of referrals before I knew it, I had 3 clients, then 5, and it was still me for a few years, just me for a few years doing Arrowhead by myself. And I was still doing resumes on the side at that point for a while. So resumes, recruiting, and the foundation. And then it got to a point where Arrowhead, I would say, took on a life of its own. After, I'd say, the 4th year is where I realized I'm getting to a point where I can't handle all this work by myself, and what the heck is going on. But it's like every day you wake up and you just do one more thing and then one more thing. And then before you know it, you look back and 5 years later, you built this thing. It's way bigger than what you could have ever envisioned. And that's where we got to that point.
Your first hire
was Cecily
Yes.
Taylor, my intern, AKA Sis. Worst decision of her life. But yeah, I was like, friends of ours, are some of our best friends ever, said, hey, our babysitter needs an internship so she can graduate. Could you help her? And I was like, yeah. So I started trying to help her. And then I realized I need the help. I'll just hire her. And so I did. And she did all of our social media. She redid my website. She started doing more and more and made herself more and more necessary. And so I was like, I can't live without this one. So I made her a job offer, and she kept interviewing elsewhere, which I was like, all right, she's not going to work for me. And then she accepted the job with me, which was awesome. And then hiring Andrew was because I was so busy onboarding new clients, and it was a weird just confluence of factors because I was onboarding 2 or 3 new clients about a week or 2 before the big charity event for the Brighter Days Foundation. I said to you, I can't do this. I don't have any. Normally I can figure out a path forward for everything and a solution to just about anything, but I was so overwhelmed. I said, I can't even think right now. And you said, I'll call Andrew. And then you called Andrew.
Who's my cousin.
And he was like, between jobs, he was like, yeah, I'll help. I'll do something for Clark for a little bit and make a little bit of money while I'm between jobs. And he assumed it would just be like a couple of months before he just, moved on. And we just kept getting busier and busier. And then I started giving him more work. And he teases me because I guess I didn't train him that well. But that kind of bums me out. But after a few months of that, I was like, man, he's so smart and capable. And it was the 3 of us, Cecily, Andrew, and me. And I was like, I don't want to do this without him now. So I got a really expensive bottle of bourbon. And I made an offer letter. I prayed an awful lot about that one too. Like, is this the right call? And I felt like it was. So I put an offer letter together, got a really nice bottle of bourbon, went over to his house unannounced on a Friday night. I made him a full-time job offer, and I'm pretty sure he was shocked. But he accepted it, and then we were a team of 3. And then that following year is where we took off, and I had no sense that was going to happen. It just all kind of happened though. And we were filling jobs for we just were getting new work, new clients. Word of mouth was really spreading. The economy was recovering post-COVID. And that's where things just really took on a life of their own, I would say, or life of its own.
From my aspect, I think that a lot of your success, obviously it was word of mouth, but I think when people realize how genuine you are and that you truly do care, and you're not just like, hey, I need to make a buck here. I really do think that you care about the companies that you work with. And I can tell just by the way you come home and you talk about them. And I know the names of people that you work with at these companies, and I feel like they're more sometimes your friends than anything, than your clients. But I think when people realize how genuine you are, it's difficult to, I don't know, they just can't help but be attached to you.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I definitely care about the people at those client companies. I care about their companies as entities. I want everybody to do better. And one of my goals in life is to make everybody's life I interact with, I want to make their lives better every day. And, again, that's, I think, why we're all here. I think life is hard enough for everybody that we should do everything we can to lighten one another's loads. And if I can show someone I love them and want to care about them, and that's what I should be doing, and so, yeah, it probably does help.
How many people do you have working for you now?
9 people. Yeah. I call them my favorite mistakes. Just joking. Yeah, 9. So we're a team of 10, including me. Yeah.
And it's quite the culture that you've built here.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I think probably. Yeah, you're right. I don't like to talk about it like because I did it. I didn't necessarily do it, but yeah, what we do is we just have something really unique. I've never worked at a place like this. I'm really proud of it. I'm proud of who we are as people. I'm proud of how everybody loves each other and cares about each other and wants the business to thrive, but also to help our clients and our candidates. And I think everybody's rowing in the same direction, which is really just outstanding. And you don't see that often, all those kind of things coming together. But there was only one person on our team who had previous recruiting experience other than me. The rest of them had none of it. Well, I guess John did as well. But the vast majority were just people I knew were smart, could be taught, wanted to learn, were humble, were good, hardworking people. And I knew that they had the skills that were the raw skills that could transfer into something like this. And so we plucked people out of very different kind of professions into this business, but I knew that they could do it. And I think my theory has been proven right. Because what I don't necessarily want like a super good recruiter who's a jerk. I want a really good person. And I know the rest will really take care of itself if you have all those traits I talked about. And so now, like, I feel like it's a group of just best friends too, which is awesome,
Very unique in a workplace.
Yeah, for sure. And I don't ever want that to go away. If that's my legacy, so be it. If that's the one thing I do, like, that's cool. That's really good. So I think it is very unique. I've never worked anywhere like this before. I trust all of them with my life. And I do trust them with my life, really, because they do all the work. So yeah, it's unique.
Yeah. What's next for Arrowhead?
I want to grow. I want to do it the right way. I think when you think about growth, obviously money is important, but I want to grow our impact. I think that we have a team of people who are really smart, really, really smart, and have so much to offer. I think a lot of intellectual horsepower and capability, but I don't think you're going to find a better group of people who are equipped to have your best interests at heart as well. So like when we're working with you on a project, we're going to be a good advocate for you and we're going to help you in many different ways. So I feel like our impact needs to be bigger. And that's my job, is to come up with ways for us to have a greater impact and unlock new levels of impact for the team by virtue of my going out there and building new alliances and relationships and kind of clearing the path for them to do that. I don't know exactly where that will go. I think we'll have to consider expansion of the team and maybe a new geography. Right now we do recruiting, obviously. I think that may take the form of doing more project-based or consulting work for companies that need help with broader issues where recruiting is a problem, but it's more of a symptom of a much larger issue that an organization is experiencing with its culture or its leadership or its operating, procedures or things like that. So I think that may be where we end up going to broaden our impact, is by doing more big picture work, big picture consulting work with teams, with companies. And I think we would be uniquely positioned to do that, especially as it pertains to recruiting and human resources processes and culture and things like that. But I don't know. I mean, those are some of the things that are kind of on my heart right now. And I would love to see that come to fruition. I know we've got the capabilities to continue making an impact in the recruiting space, and I want to keep doing that for sure. But a team like this, and you put together something like this and then it's bigger than you, like I said, we need to make more of an impact, and I know that we will.
Who is your favorite employee? I'm kidding. I'm kidding.
Well,
who's your favorite child? No. I'm kidding. Is there anything
Myself.
else? Yeah, well, employee of the month.
Mm-hmm.
You're right. You are reigning, I don't know how many months in a row.
Yeah, 984 months
Yeah.
in a row.
Quite a few. Employee of the month.
I am the best. I say that with all humility, but I am the best employee. I'm joking.
Is there anything that is glaring that I've missed or that you feel like you want to say?
I don't think there's anything new to add to the story. I just think that, like, when I think about this podcast and this company and all this kind of stuff, the theme that comes back, I think, well, two things. The first is, like, the bad stuff happens and it works out for the good in some way. That's not your job to figure that out, like why it happens that way or how it ends up being good. But I feel like all the bad stuff that's happened to us and me has turned out ultimately for our good. And like, if it wasn't for my layoffs, I wouldn't have started Arrowhead, and I wouldn't have been able to work for this foundation. I feel like I'm in a position now where I can make a bigger impact and a better impact for the world. And hopefully it's a springboard to keep doing more and more good things for people. And that's the biggest theme, I think, for this. But when I think about like the podcast and the company and all that kind of stuff, why I had such a desire to do something like this is because I really want to help everybody I talk to and help them find their place so they can make an impact too. And I think that's why Arrowhead exists. I think that's why we're all here, and I think that's why when you guys are listening, if you have a company or you want to start a company, if you have a company right now and people don't want to work for you and people keep quitting, maybe it's because you don't have a vision or you're not articulating the vision or people aren't drawn to what you're doing. And that's something you have to figure out for yourself. Like, what is it that you're doing and why are you doing it? For me, I feel like we articulate that vision very clearly time and time again. And we demonstrate that through our values and our commitment to the community and our clients and our candidates and all that kind of stuff. But like, if you don't have that and, people are leaving you or you can't attract people to work for you or you're, those kinds of things, like it's probably time to consider what is your why and why are you here? And I think those are some big themes from this. Like, I think that's why I wanted to do this podcast. I think that's why Arrowhead exists. I think, those things are really what are just the themes that come out of this for me more than anything. Is the bad stuff is going to happen, but it's going to turn into some good stuff eventually. And then why are you here? And you got to figure that out. You're not going to figure it out ever, but you can keep grasping for it and trying and doing good for people in the process and be used to make the world a better place. And if you're not doing that, you're cheating yourself and you're cheating the world. So those would be the things I would say when I think about this discussion.
Last question. How much have you loved talking about yourself the past hour? Oh my gosh. It's your favorite.
I have not really enjoyed that very much. I have not. But I think that, again, if you have something that you have to say, and your story needs to be told, then you need to do it. And I think that through all this crap I've gone through, like telling people my story when I got laid off the first time, how hard that was, and like I can now use that when I talk to people who are coming to me and they're like, dude, I just got laid off. What do I even do? And I just tell them my story. I'm like, I get it, man. It sucks. It's gonna suck. I get it. And I can just tell them, like, I have the unique honor of having been laid off 2 times in the span of 11 months. Like, I know, I get it. It sucks, dude. So I feel like that alone is worth, getting this out there into the universe, because I get it, man. It sucks. And I know I keep saying that over and over again, but like, I've been able to share that story with people now countless times. And you can see the look on their faces and the barriers just drop when you're open with people about it. And it makes them think like, well, this dude started his own company and he runs a foundation and he came out on the other end of it. Like, he's not that special. I can do it too. So like sharing that with people, I think is probably one of the biggest reasons also why I went through what I did. I can share it now and I can inspire other people to know it's going to be okay. And I have the compassion and the passion to help them find their next thing And you never forget, you'll never forget when you're at your lowest, you will never forget when you're at your lowest how people treat you when you're down. I had a friend who would call me almost every day. How are you doing, man? I had friends text me or call, I am praying for you right now. What can I pray for? Or let's go out. Let's go grab a coffee or a drink or whatever. And you never forget what life is all about in those moments. You'll never forget the people who cared about you when you were at your lowest point. And that to me is what it's all about. So like if I can do that for somebody else and help them get through that time, then I guess it was all worth it too. So like if you're going through it, we all are to some extent, you know, but if you got laid off just now, or you're lost, or you hate your job, or you just got into a fight with your boss, or going through a divorce, whatever, like you can do it, you know, you can come out on the other side. It's terrible to go through it. But if Winston Churchill said, who is on my wall right here, for those of you watching, if you're going through hell, keep going. And, you know, that's what I try to tell people and help them with my story. Now I'm done.
I do think that it's a very inspirational story. And I think you're very deserving of the success that you have now. Because I think you're a good man and you're a good boss and you're a good dad. So,
am I a good husband?
Oh, you're good. Yes. Sorry. Yes. I didn't mean good. Great husband. It just didn't fit with the good. It's a great husband.
That's what I thought. Yeah. Well, thanks. It's certainly not comfortable to talk about yourself, but if it helps, then that's all that really, really matters. And yeah, I'm glad we ended up doing this.
Yeah, for sure.
Okay. Is that it?
That's all I got.
Guess we're done. All right, guys. Thank you.